Okay, we are back with another episode of the Mormon Dads podcast. And after last week's uh, downer of a podcast, would you consider last week's podcast kind of a downer?
Wait, no, it's never a downer, man. This is all good.
Well, I just know in the when I posted it on the website, I was just kind of like, we keep choosing things that we're not good at and talking about.
Well, I don't know if tonight changes that at all. We're going to find out. If there's too many personal stories shared, then we'll maybe know that we got to find something that we don't relate to at all.
That could be true. That could be true. Do you want to frame tonight's conversation for us a little bit?
Sure. So, what the guys and I were talking about a couple of weeks when we were talking about topics was in our LDS community, what constitutes success as a father, as a husband, as a priesthood holder. There's many hats we wear, and each of them has a certain way to gauge if you're successful in that. Now, there may not be consensus among that definition, and maybe that's what makes the discussion interesting tonight. And we probably should mention, Matt, it's just you and I. So
yep.
We're just tossing this back and forth tonight. So that's what I thought we could discuss for a minute, is looking back on the different benchmarks in life, what constitutes success. And you know what? For some of these, I'll put right out front, I don't know that we can positively answer that we've been successful fathers yet, Matt. You know, we got a long way to go, man.
Because we're in the process.
Yeah, that's right. And, I think we can talk about, sorry, what?
I think that's a fair statement that we're kind of in the process.
Yeah.
I would like to think that I've been a successful father up until, well, tonight probably. I think I was a little insensitive when my daughter didn't want to go to school tomorrow. Yeah. And she was crying, and I was like, you just have to go. So I don't know. I don't know if that was good fatherhood or not good fatherhood, but I don't know that that's really what we're getting at in this conversation.
Well, I guess you'll know better tomorrow when she comes home from her first day of school.
Well, she's been 4 days so far.
Oh, okay. See, they haven't started up here yet. We got another week off.
Yeah, she is just like, she's beside herself that she can't go to school one more day, and there's only 176 days left. So it's going to be a long school year. And she's got an amazing teacher, super nice teacher. My kids just don't like school. They really, neither of them. They would prefer to just stay home. And we've talked about homeschooling, but we think it would be just as much of a fight to get them to do the homeschool stuff as it would be just to get them to go to school. So I guess they just don't like to learn.
All right. Well, sounds like you got to step in as a father and do something about that.
Now, maybe I'm failing as a father.
All right. Well, case study number 1. Matt's recent attempt with his children. But in all seriousness with that, though, success is defined by a whole bunch of thousands and thousands and thousands of decisions and instances that we're all going to participate in and make judgment calls on over the next however many years. Mm-hmm. And after all that is really the only time I think you can kind of successfully say, yeah, that was all right. Or no, I was terrible. I don't know if you can judge this really successfully in the moment. I think that's pretty tough. I mean, obviously, if you're doing some stupid stuff and you're harming your children, you're actively harming them, well, then you're a deadbeat, and I can tell you're a bad dad. My guess is that's not the case. You're simply choosing between many good things. And I don't know if you can immediately interpret the fruits of that.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think you're kind of referring to people who intentionally are jerks to their kids and stuff like that. Because I think there are a lot of people who just don't know better. Like, they haven't been taught. They just don't know like some of the kids that I work with at school who's, their parents, they're doing the best that they really can,
Yeah.
but they just don't have the capacity
Yeah.
to do better yet. And so I think that, but I think your statement about it's really hard to judge in the moment is, I think that's fair. And on the other hand, though, I do think that there are things that you can learn and best practices that you can apply to being a parent. I don't think that it's something where even if you can't judge in the moment, or if we feel like, okay, so I've got to wait until either my kids are grown and we see how they turn out, or if we wait until the end of our lives and we have to get to our deathbed to be able to make that judgment of, was I a good dad or was I not? I don't know about that, but I do believe that there are things that that we can do. I guess my point to that is that doesn't justify just throwing your hands up and being like, well, I'll just do whatever and we'll see how it turns out.
Yeah, I would agree. I wouldn't leave anything to chance. There's too much to risk there, right? Yeah, that's the deal with that. I wouldn't be comfortable just saying, well, let's hope between the village that they get raised right, and in the meantime, I'll just kind of do whatever. Yeah, I couldn't leave that to chance. Too much at stake.
Yeah, well, and too much scriptural direction and commandment of what it means to be a parent, right? It talks in the scriptures, if we don't teach our kids the gospel, if we don't teach them right from wrong, then any sins that's a sin on our heads to not teach and to not bring them up in the gospel and teach them not to quarrel and not to fight and to be baptized, and then what those covenants mean, and then on up until they become adults on their own. That's our charge, is to teach them and to bring them up that way. But the question of the night is, what does success mean? If that's your responsibility, what does it mean to be successful?
Yeah. You want me to answer that right now, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
I don't know, because so here's what I was kind of daydreaming a touch when you were saying that. No offense, but you're making me think about, in the context, especially in the LDS context, there's a lot of pressure to raise your kids a certain way that you wouldn't see in other denomination contexts. Let's put it that way. I mean, and this is not to disparage any other denomination at all, but if you were to say, oh, you're going to raise a good old-fashioned Lutheran boy, what does that mean? Surely you're going to raise a God-fearing young man that's going to be respectful, and those are all good things, but there's a whole different level to that in the Mormon culture.
How so?
Well, there's implications in the Mormon culture that there isn't in other faiths, like missionary service, for example.
So, and that's a big one that you bring up, that am I a failure as a father if my son doesn't go on a mission?
Right. And I would suggest, and this is maybe not right, but I would suggest that right or wrong, parents feel some level of success or failure depending on the choices of their children, regards to mission.
Without question. And with any choices of their children, like we take pride or we are disappointed in the choices that our kids make.
Yeah.
But mission is a big one. And that's something that me and my wife talk about, because my son, he's only 11, but we talk about a mission. He's like, yeah, I don't think that's for me.
Yeah. And
so we're just like, well, it's your choice, and we're not going to freak out about it probably ever.
Mm-hmm.
But would we want him to serve a mission? Yeah, we would want him to serve a mission. We feel like that would be a choice of him fulfilling a duty to God that and a commandment that God's asked of him. But if he doesn't choose to do it, then that's his choice. And so the question is, how does that reflect on me as a dad? Am I a failure as a father? Because I don't know, maybe we didn't read scriptures enough, or maybe me and my wife didn't go to the temple enough, or all those things on the previous podcast.
Yeah.
That were like,
it's funny you mention that, because that's exactly, I was going to kind of steer you there a little bit, but you could have said the question was rhetorical. So your 11-year-old says to you, that's not for me. And I have to imagine that it crosses your mind. You and your wife sit there and almost take a bit of an inventory of, well, did we drop the ball somewhere? Did we not sing I Hope They Call Me on a Mission enough for family home evening? Did we not, did I not share enough good mission stories? Did we do something wrong? And I can speak to that firsthand too, because up until I was 18 years old, I wasn't going on a mission. No way, no how. And I was actually a little obnoxious about it to a large degree. And, I had those conversations and had those tough conversations with my parents about how, look, guys, whatever plan B is, let's get on with it, because I'm not going on a mission. So deal with it. And of course, my mother's mortified, and my dad is being stoic about it and helping me work through what the plan is. But, there's some disappointment there. And as a parent, you start to wonder, man, did I not teach this kid the right thing? Did I scare him off somehow? What happened?
So here's a question in that line of thinking, though, is as a parent, do you feel like your parents, that it was an ego thing for them, or that they felt like what you were going to miss out on if you didn't serve a mission, or what the possible directions that your life could go if you didn't serve a mission, and they were concerned about that? What do you think the bigger concern was for them?
So probably in my case, if I remember the order of your questions, but I'll reiterate, no, yes, yes. And what I mean is, I don't think it was truly an ego thing, because my dad didn't serve a mission. And when him and I would have these discussions, he was pretty clear about how I cannot tell you that you should serve a mission because I chose not to. That was his position. But I think for both of them, the issue wasn't, I want to be careful here, because I'm guessing at their intentions, but when you grow up like I do in Cardston, or you did in Utah, there's an expectation that's what your boys do.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a bit of a social judgment upon you when they don't. I've done it. I have friends or family that are like, I'm like, oh, hey, where's your boy? Oh, well, he moved up here to work. And I'm thinking, oh, there's some reason he can't serve a mission, huh? Of course, it's where our mind's going. It's not fair at all. But I think with my parents, I think genuinely they felt that that's what was going to ground me a little bit. That's what was going to bring me down to earth and set me on the path. Mm-hmm. And it needed something away from them and away from home, and somewhere where I had to stretch a little bit and get a little uncomfortable. And I think they felt that was the Mormon military school. Okay, they were gonna send me there, and I was gonna get my head straight, and I was gonna get my crap together, and then I'd be all right. And then when I told them that wasn't the case, there was a bit of a panic about, well, what then do we have this boy engaged in so he does get his head right? And
that makes sense.
So I think genuinely that was the concern. What changed it for me was I went to school for a semester. I moved out of the house and went to school for a semester, and I genuinely understood that my parents were going to support me either way. And there was no more point of rebellion. Mm-hmm. And that disappointed me a little bit, I think. And then it just seemed like it was the right thing for me to do, but it was now my decision and it wasn't theirs anymore. And I know that sounds super immature, but that's how it went for me. I left home and was like, that could be kind of cool. I'm gonna
You're
get.
19. You're still super immature when you're 19.
I know. We were, and
At least I totally was, and I wasn't going to go on a mission either. Um, and I don't know, I don't remember having any real thoughts about it as I grew up and stuff like that. But when it got closer to time to go, I just wasn't going to. And then my friends started going, and my best friend was getting ready, and so I just thought, you know what, I'm going to decide if it's right for me, and did the, read the Book of Mormon and pray about it and decided that it's something that I should do. And so I don't know that I really had any pressure from my mom ever.
oh, okay.
My grandparents. I don't remember that. I know my mom was disappointed when I told her I wasn't going to go on a mission, and felt a lot more pressure from the bishop and like the young men's leaders that I had about going on a mission. But it was more peer pressure that kind of steered me in the direction to go. But and there was some ego involved there for me too, is I was the first missionary ever from our ward since they split our ward.
Oh yeah.
It'd been like 6 or 7 years or whatever since they split our ward, and so I was the first one ever. And so yeah, so there was a little ego there, and the like there's so much fanfare around going on a mission in Utah that I think that was part of it for me too.
Yeah. And when you and I went, that was when the time when you did the big farewells and you did all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Mom and dad spoke, and the siblings sang, and your girlfriend sang, and I mean, it was a to-do.
It was.
I look back on it now, and I'm actually a bit embarrassed by the whole spectacle, to be honest.
Oh, not me. I loved my farewell. It was a grand event.
Wow.
It was awesome.
Well, I put you on stage.
No, wait. Long hymns, 3 musical numbers, and 3 speakers. Like, it was something like that. It was big. It was
a
huge.
Marathon, eh?
And I just ate it all up.
I'm sure you did.
But I will say this, that didn't sustain me once I got out into the mission field, and it was hard.
Right.
Like, all that stuff was gone, and there was just work to do. And so, like, I struggled.
So getting back, though, I just had a thought here, getting back to our original topic.
Which we're way off of.
What's that?
We're way off of our original topic.
I'm bringing us back.
Okay.
You said I could moderate tonight, so I'm bringing us back. So focus.
Okay. You're doing a good job.
What I'm thinking, though, is so both you and I were in this situation where we weren't going to go. And then circumstances were that we changed our minds and we went. Did that change? How do I phrase this? Did that all of a sudden make our parents better parents or more successful parents? Or parent?
That's such a great question.
And my gut says no, by the way, but not to give you the moral. But so all of a sudden we choose to go. You have your long hymns, 3 speakers, all these songs, big farewell. Mom's just like walking on the clouds.
Yep, she's over the moon.
The community looks at her and says, now that lady knows how to raise a young man. And all of a sudden, socially in our little bubble of this LDS church, that's a more successful mom than if she had to go around and tell everyone, well, Matt's gone down to community college so that he's not serving a mission. And we felt it was best that he goes on and gets on with his schooling. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. We just grew up in this really homogenous Mormon culture.
Yeah. So then that leads me to ask the question, though, too, is your success as a parent determined by each kid and their decisions as they reach each milestone. Does that make sense? So if you have
Yeah.
4 kids and the first one goes on a mission, but the next one
Yeah.
doesn't, and the next one doesn't, but the last one does,
Right.
it's like, hey, I figured it out finally in the end.
Yeah. So if you bookended it, then everything's fine, right? But that's a tough thing, and it's not fair. It's simply not fair to parents in the LDS Church that we do that. And it's probably not right. I was going to say right or wrong, but it's probably not right that we do that, because there's a line in the sand, and there comes a time when Matt and Jeff make their own decisions, but we know all the information with which to make that decision by.
Mm-hmm.
We understand the foundational doctrine. We understand the basis of the decision because we've been taught well. But at some point in time, there's not a gun put to your head and told you're going on a mission. At least not in my case and not in yours.
Mm-hmm.
So to answer my question about, because I then decided to go, were my parents better parents? I'm saying no. But I'm also not suggesting they were inferior to start with. I had a great upbringing, and my parents armed me with all that information that when I got to sit down free from all that other stuff at home and just make a decision, I made a decision. And do I feel it was the right one? Yeah, I do. But I don't think that had I chose otherwise, it was because they were deficient.
Well, you look at a story like Enos in the Book of Mormon, right? Where he's going along and and in his story he decides to pray, and then he receives his witness. And you've got Alma the Younger, who was actively seeking to destroy the church, which neither you or I were. Like, we weren't in that space, but he, Alma the elder, the dad, like, were people looking at him and saying, man, and Messiah, who was the king, right? Were people looking at them and being like, man, they are chump dads.
Yeah, right.
Look at their kids.
Yeah.
And then in the end, they all become great missionaries and get converted and stuff like that. I just think the question that we're asking is so complex.
Mm-hmm.
And do people make judgments? Yes. But is it really possible to make a fair judgment? I don't think so, because you never really know the total circumstance and the complete circumstance of what's happening and what's going on in family.
It's just interesting to me, and I guess it is a bit of a commentary on us as a social group, not as I was going to say as a church, but I'm trying to shy away from that term, because this really has, what I'm about to say isn't a reflection of the doctrine of the church. It's a reflection of the social nature of the church, that we are, as a group, very quick to make those rash judgments. Oh man, that kid didn't go on a mission. Either the kid has some kind of fault, or the parents didn't do something right, and it's totally incorrect, but we do it.
Yeah.
And
I think we're getting better at it, though.
Are we? Because now if we don't send them by 18, now there's really something wrong.
I do think, at least from my perspective and in my most recent circumstances, and in watching things happen in my ward and within my own family, that I think and listening to the messages in General Conference about, there's been quite a few of loving everybody and not being judgmental, and some of those go more along the lines of the gay marriage issue and the same-sex attraction stuff. But there's really a push, I think, to be more charitable and more understanding and more open to people who make different choices than you do, so that there's a way, or not a way, but I think we're moving in that direction as a social group. And and as it, like you said, I think you're right in not labeling this to the church, but I think people within the church are moving in that direction in general. I think you're going to have people in every ward that are high and mighty and quick to judge. But and maybe it's just that I'm in a ward that really is super supportive and is not judgmental, because that's really the case. I mean, we've got a really great type ward that really, I can't even think of anybody that I would look at and be like, well, maybe I do that sometimes.
And there we go.
When I really think about it. But I do think we're getting better at allowing more diversity and people to make more diverse choices. At least that's been my experience.
All right. Well, I'm going to shift gears on you for a second then.
Okay.
Guy walks into a bar. No, wait, sorry, wrong intro. Guy walks into a church.
Mm-hmm.
And you sit and see that guy walk in, and you say to yourself, that's a good elder right there. That's a good member of the church. Mm-hmm. That guy, he's a good cat right there. What is that guy doing different from the next guy that walks in and you're saying, I'm either completely indifferent about that guy or I want to punch him in the mouth? So and I know that you see all the kinds.
It's his teeth.
Is it?
I don't know.
That's it, huh?
I just remember talking about Elder Henry on our mission. And
that guy, what a smile.
His teeth. And then we went to that lady and we're like, who's that elder that had the really nice teeth? And so that's why I make that joke about it's his teeth. But so what is that guy doing? I don't know that it's anything, because you could be talking about charisma, which I think is totally separate from the conversation that we're having.
Yeah, I suppose I could be. I didn't consider that, but I'll say yeah, I could be.
So, and it also depends on maybe what you know about that person too. But are you saying you're going to a new ward and you walk in and you're like, that's a good person right there?
Well, even you sit in your quorum meetings, you sit in auxiliary meetings, you're looking for counselors, you're looking for people. We all know the fact of the matter is, within our wards, within our communities, within our neighborhoods, we've got guys, well, and gals, but let's just focus on the fellas here. We got guys that are simply better brothers than others. Okay. They just are. And you and I are some varying degree of good brother in the church. Mm-hmm. One probably better than the other. But I'm curious what we gauge as, this guy's a successful priesthood holder. This guy's a successful brother in the church, and he is the model of what one should be.
So the question that you're asking is, what does success mean as an elder in the church?
Yeah.
Like what does that mean? How do we gauge that?
Yeah.
And I think that's a dicey question to answer if we're looking at other people and saying, based on this other person, this is what I'm going to say is successful. And I don't know that there's any other way to do it, but I think that people are so complex and everybody's battling their own demons, that if we could see into everybody's life all the way, that we might be surprised at, oh, this person has this struggle and this person has this struggle. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but I think I agree that my question might have been framed wrong, comparing against another person. What I think there are some, I want to be cautious. We tend to find ourselves as a people always sliding into relativism, that, well, this is good, or this person's good, or I'm being good because of all these reasons. But you and I both know there's some hard, fast things
Mm-hmm.
that a guy should be doing that makes him, you know, a good dad, a good husband, a good elder. You know, there are those things, and some go without saying. They're just simple things, but I think, and it's probably not fair, but frankly, if you line up all the fellas in the ward one day, there are better guys and worse guys when it comes to brothers in the church. And yes, we all have circumstances. We're all pushed on by different
that statement again, and I'll see if you agree. Can I make that statement relative again?
Sure.
So the way I would phrase it is that there are better guys and worse guys in the moment of their progression.
All right.
Like there are people who are further along in their progression in becoming more celestial or more like Heavenly Father. I think that, and I don't think this was your intention of saying better or worse, but that kind of starts to put a value on the person themselves and the soul of the person,
Mm-hmm.
which I kind of think is unfair, because a person could be, I don't know. I just think that for me, I would like to phrase it that there are people who are further along in their progression than others, with everybody having the same value as a child of God or whatever. And that may be the social worker in me.
No, I can't argue with that train of thought. You know, I posed the question to elicit a response, but I think I totally agree with you. I heard talking about that, it reminded me of a saying from an old seminary teacher when I was probably 16 years old. He just drew a line on the board, chalkboard at the time, no whiteboards yet, so it's starting to date me.
Yep.
Draws a line all the way down the chalkboard and said, this is the continuum, and we're all on some place on this continuum. One
Mm-hmm.
side being more celestial, one side less. And he said, the fact of the matter is, within this room, we're all on a different place. But he said, to him, it was far less consequential where we were as to what direction we were facing.
Mm-hmm.
And that really stuck with me, because, and that I think ties in with what you're suggesting, is that it's pretty hard to say because you're further down the continuum than I might be, that the worth of your soul is greater. That's probably not a fair statement at all.
Sure.
If we're both facing the same direction on the continuum. So as much as I like to elicit a response from you on occasion, I agree with what you said. And
Well,
I'm not going to debate it.
With that, though, I think part of the answer to your question is, if I'm successful as an elder or as a priesthood holder, part of my role is to help people face the right direction, to help people move along that continuum.
Okay.
Primarily my family, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also really anybody that you come in contact with. When you take upon yourself the name of Christ, you are hopefully living as a Christian and being somebody that turns people to Christ by the way that you act and the things that you say and the love and the caring that you offer to people. And I think that some of us are better than others at that. But going back to your question, and I've just been thinking in my mind, if I line up all the people in my ward, all the guys in my ward, and I look at who would I say is a successful father, husband, priesthood holder, there's a few people that I mentioned, and you're right. Like you think about the few people that you do, and I think they're that way for different reasons. And I don't know how to expand on that more clearly, but Brother Peterson is a guy that I respect a ton, just because of how he is super soft-spoken and super humble and willing to help anybody. And I look at that as being successful as a priesthood holder. And I look at his family, and like his family is super close, and I don't know that I would say, and I don't know enough to make a judgment here about how, if his kids are like fully invested, or if they're not fully invested in the gospel, would be a good way to say it. I just don't know enough. But he's a guy that I would put on that list, and those traits are things that those are the traits that I would, some of those, the humility and the being willing to help and being willing to fulfill whatever callings, and not be and not do it half-heartedly just because you don't like that particular calling that you're in, I think would be some answers to that question.
Yeah. So I think maybe what we can pull all this together, and we never do a very good job of this, but if I were to make a wild attempt at pulling this all together, I think what you said kind of does that. You mentioned a specific person. I don't know this person, and it doesn't matter. I don't need to know them. But you followed up by suggesting a number of virtues for, grasping for a term. He's humble, soft-spoken, he serves, he's family-centered. So I think not to just have a whole podcast end on seminary answers, but it is by their fruits ye shall know them. In this case, you see this brother and you say, look, he embodies and he shows by his actions attributes that I know are doctrinally good and sound and things that I should emulate. It's pretty hard to argue that that's what makes one successful.
Yeah.
I think we have a tougher argument when we say, okay, brother so-and-so does all these things, and boy, his son didn't serve a mission, so he's probably a pretty inferior guy. That's a tough argument. Yeah. Because my guess is he's armed that child, that son or daughter, with everything they need with which to make a correct decision, which was his primary responsibility.
I agree.
And so my guess is with this brother you mentioned, he hasn't abdicated that responsibility and done what he can. So once again, we kill 45 minutes, and I'm not sure what the conclusion is, but maybe it is that by their fruits you shall know them. And
here's something that came to mind is, and I don't know if this is a training that you were at too, but there was a training that someone gave that talked about asking the question of what does a 10 level, like if you're going to rate from 1 to 10, what does a 10 level missionary do? Yeah. That was the topic. You remember that one?
No,
I think that holds true in this conversation. Not that we would make a list of, okay, this is what a 10 level father does. This is what a 10 level husband does. But I think it's worth each individual person asking that question, like, okay, so where am I? And what does a 10 level, if I'm not a level 10, what does a 10 level husband do? And I think that everybody's inner knower will tell them something that they can do better that would make them a better father or a better husband. And I think it would be individual to each person, but they could look at that and say, okay, that's the one thing I could do to get better. That's what I'm going to commit to doing. And I think that progress, if we're progressing, that's the whole purpose, right? That's the name of the game, is growth and progress and getting better. And if we look at it that way, instead of trying to compare ourselves with other people, or trying to put a definition on what successful looks like. But if each person is continually growing and saying, okay, what's my next step? What, as I strive to be more perfect, what is it that I do better? And they come up with that idea. So, hey, look who's here.
I was just about to say amen, Mark. We were wrapping this thing up.
Alright, sorry. Matt usually texts me when I'm not on it.
Yeah, I sent you a Facebook message. I sent both of you a Facebook message this time, but forgot to do the text. So, but it's good to see your face. It's good to hear your voice.
And your bright pink shirt.
My bright pink volleyball shirt, yes.
Yeah. Did you have a game today?
We just had practice tonight because we have our first game tomorrow.
Oh, cool. Where? Oh, so you're going on the camp out, plus you have a game.
Yeah, so I'm going to go down to Provo to the ropes course, and then I go up to Westridge, go over to ICS for the game, drop the girls back off, and then go up and meet them in Provo Canyon for the rest of the camp out.
Aye. That's a lot of travel.
Be a busy day tomorrow.
That is a busy day. That is a busy day. Well, we just we solved the singularity. Like we figured out the singularity while you were gone. So.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
No.
No, what we were just, should we just try and finish this? You'll have to edit all this out, Matt, but should we just finish this up and then we can chat for a minute?
Yeah.
So first of all, you need to explain to me, you used a term that you said inner knower. I have never heard that before in my life. Is that the Jiminy Cricket of...
Yeah, it is. It's really a way that I've been able to use in not a religious or spiritual setting with kids when they ask me questions.
All right.
Saying what does the Spirit tell you when you listen to the Spirit? It really, did I go to this party this weekend? Well, what does your inner knower tell you?
Okay.
No. Okay then. There you go. And I think that part of a big a challenge that we face in our society is that people aren't in harmony with their inner knower, and they're trying to distract themselves because they're not in harmony, and they feel this discomfort's the wrong word, but they feel that disharmony, and so they're trying to find a way to either distract themselves from it. But there's a lot of peace and a lot of inner power that comes from just being reconciled to your inner knower of, you know what, the things that I'm messing up in, and I accept it, and I'm going to fix it. Or, you know what, I feel like I shouldn't do this thing, and I'm going to listen to that and be okay and reconcile myself.
All right. Well, that's pretty heavy. So I guess we've been going now for about 50 minutes, but I think in the end we've determined that what gauges success as a husband, father, or elder, priesthood holder in the church is those, not so much, I guess, we've determined we're not going to gauge it based on maybe every decision your child makes or every decision that those you come in contact make, but if you're doing those things that you should be doing on a daily basis, and if you're, as a father, if you're arming your children with the emotional and spiritual and intellectual intelligence they need to succeed, and as a priesthood holder, if you're serving and if you used a few attributes of being humble and serving and family-centered. So I think we hit on some good things that when you do some introspection, you can kind of gauge where you are in those specific places in your life, but it's very hard to externally gauge success in a spiritual context. Mm-hmm. Very, very hard. And I think I liked our part of the discussion that talked about how, and you and I both touched on this, that continuum of we're all on different places on that continuum. but it's very hard to judge someone for where they're at, but more it's important what direction they're heading, and that's really the ultimate piece of importance. So whether we solved all the world's problems on that topic, I don't know, but we had a good discussion about it anyway.
It was a good discussion. It was a good discussion. So, all right. Well, we are over our general time that we allot for podcasts. So let's wrap this one up, and we'll talk to everybody next week.
All right.